Despite their bravado, despite their posturing, the MCU is struggling.
Yes! I am invincible!
The rollout of Phase 4 of the MCU was as smooth as sandpaper and as profitable as Disney+. In fact, it's not a stretch to say that Phase 4 was ruinous and damaging to the Marvel brand because people are sick of the same old formulaic movie stories and, more importantly, they're tired of the woke messaging.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Now, I can hear all the MCU shills out there whining that anytime any character that isn't a white male is the center of a story, mean old guys like me just call it woke as a racist dog whistle. Well, allow me to jam that imaginary dog whistle right where it belongs, directly down the throat of anyone stupid enough to make this claim without listening to my argument. But at this point, I feel like I have to pause and point out that one of my top 3 favorite comic book movies is Blade 2, which is not, decidedly not, woke. It's simply badass. And Aliens 2 is arguably the greatest science fiction film of all time, in my opinion. Sigourney Weaver's Ripley is a bad woman. But there are 2 important traits that both of these movies have in common, which helped them be entertaining to their audience.
Class is in session. The teacher's teaching class now.
First of all, they were original films, not reboots or retreads of something the audience has seen 100 times. They were original. And perhaps more importantly, they didn't beat the audience over the head with the fact that Blade is black and Ripley is a woman.
Liar!
You don't believe me?
Naturally, there are plenty of MCU shills out there who don't want to believe the whole thing is being sucked into the shitter. But in this video, we're going to take a look at the news that Disney is slowing down the MCU, dialing back on all the content they're producing. And then we'll take a look at the financial reasons for why they're doing this, namely the failings of the MCU films to make money.
What is this? Where's all the money?
That's as good as money, sir. Those are IOUs.
Finally, we'll end the video discussing the failing new Ant-Man film and what the MCU Phase 5 is going to look like moving forward. Spoiler alert, it's gonna suck, because nobody gives a shit about these diversity hire, bottom of the barrel, nobody characters they're trying to dump on the general public.
Nobody cares.
So hang on to your hats and pour one out for the MCU, because we're going to do an autopsy on this son of a gun so that everyone can see what's really going on here, and we can collectively throw a little more dirt on the open grave.
Hey, what's that you got on your face?
Huh?
Blah, blah, blah! See how that works?
Several pieces of bad news have been revealed for the MCU recently, starting with this little chestnut. This article is from Bounding Into Comics. Marvel reportedly undertaking heavy slowdown of Disney Plus output. Echo and Ironheart seemingly delayed indefinitely.
Oh, that's too bad.
According to a new report, in light of the plummeting interest of the studio's Disney Plus specific output and the overall struggling health of the platform itself, Marvel is cutting back, way back, on the frequency of their streaming specific releases. This news was first brought to public attention on February 16th, courtesy of The Hollywood Reporter. per their insider sources within the company in light of studio head Kevin Feige's recent declaration to Entertainment Weekly that they would be both spacing out and scaling back their streaming release schedule so that each project can get a chance to shine. Marvel will be making themselves scarce in the coming year. Corporate bullshit isn't my first language, but I speak a little. Let's see if I can translate here. Basically, this is Marvel admitting they're pumping out way too many products that people don't give a rat's rear end about, and they're spending ungodly sums of money. This is the Star Wars movie fatigue all over again. You may remember after Solo: A Star Wars Story bombed in 2018, a direct result of people being pissed at The Last Jedi, Bob Iger said that fans had Star Wars fatigue, failing to admit that people didn't like The Last Jedi. And subsequently, we haven't had a new Star Wars movie since 2019's Rise of Skywalker. Essentially, just like last time, Marvel, just like Star Wars, is looking for a new direction. Want more proof? Look at this headline from The Verge. The Marvels is being pushed back to November. The Marvels director Nia DaCosta's follow-up to the first Captain Marvel was originally slated to touch down right in the thick of summer blockbuster season. Those plans are changing, but Marvel's releasing a promising new look at the movie to tide folks over. The Marvels, starring Brie Larson as Carol Danvers, WandaVision's Teyana Paris as Monica Rambeau, and Ms. Marvel's Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan, will now hit theaters on November 10th rather than July 28th, as was previously announced.
Ouch time!
In order to understand why they made these decisions at Marvel, let's have fun with one of my favorite pastimes, looking at Disney movies to see how much they lost, how much money they've gone in the hole. MCU Phase 4, as you probably guessed, didn't fare very well. Let's go through the list chronologically of the MCU Phase 4 movies. According to Google, Black Widow grossed $379.8 million at the box office. As you may remember, it was simultaneously streamed on Disney Plus for a cost of $30 per user, and the film made another $125 million in this way, bringing its total haul to $504.8 million. That might sound like a lot, but remember that movie studios only get half the box office. The rest goes to the movie theaters, leaving Black Widow with only $314.9 million that it made for Disney. According to Google, Black Widow had a production budget of $200 million, and an article from The Observer estimates the film's advertising budget to be at around $150 million. Meaning Black Widow lost Disney approximately $35 million.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
According to Google, the global box office haul for Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings was $432.2 million. If we divide that number in half to account for what Disney actually collects, we are left with $216.1 million. Google says Shang-Chi's production budget was between $150 and $200 million to make. Even if we assume the lowest number in that range of $150 million, that only leaves $66.1 million left over, and these days, Disney spends at a minimum 9 figures on advertising for MCU films, meaning that Shang-Chi cost the studio roughly $34 million at a bare minimum.
I don't care what universe you're from. That's gotta hurt.
And now let's take a peek at an MCU franchise that is all but guaranteed never to get a sequel, The Eternals. Why won't it get a sequel? Well, according to Google, the film went $72.6 million over its $200 million production budget. When you combine that with a box office of only $402.1 million, well, it's not very good, folks. Those numbers mean the film lost Disney roughly $70.5 million before we even start talking about advertising costs, which, if we factor in the bare minimum $100 million that Disney spends, we're talking about a loss upwards of $170.5 million. At last, we get to have a peek at a film that actually made some moolah. Spider-Man No Way Home was inarguably a massive success. But then again, there was minimal identity politics and a ton of nostalgia for fans. Spider-Man took in $1.916 billion. When you factor in the movie theater's cut, that leaves $958 million approximately. When you factor in the $200 million production budget, we're left with roughly $758 million. And we can assume Disney pulled no punches with Spider-Man, spending on the high end of the advertising curve at around $200 million, leaving a whopping $558 million. But here is where Disney really takes it in the pants. Due to a licensing agreement, since Sony technically owns the rights to Spider-Man films, Disney only gets to keep 25% of Spider-Man profits. That means Disney was left with around $140 million from Spider-Man No Way Home. Good, but not enough to cover the losses from the Eternals.
You're screwed. Thank you. Bye.
Well, what about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, you may ask? Wasn't it the top-grossing film last spring? Well, I'm glad you asked. It made $955.8 million at the box office, with a production budget of somewhere between $172 million and $200 million. If we assume best-case scenario of $172 million cost, with the rule of thumb that Disney usually spends as much on advertising as it does on production, then we can estimate that Disney made around $133.9 million on Doctor Strange. With Thor: Love and Thunder's production cost of $250 million combined with its global box office haul of $761 million, that leaves only $130.5 million left over, with a Google estimate of $100 million for its advertising budget. They made $30.5 million on the film. That leaves us at $60.9 million to the positive for the MCU thus far, and it brings us to Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. This movie made $855.1 million according to Google, and of course, Disney and their shills will tout this number as if it's some great accomplishment. It sounds like a ton, but they didn't even break even. The production budget was $250 million, and Google says the advertising budget was a whopping $250 million. Because of course, Disney desperately wanted this movie to succeed for ideological reasons. Unfortunately for them, when you factor in the movie theater's cut, minus the cost of advertising and production, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever lost Disney roughly $72.5 million.
You dumb bastard.
This drops the overall profitability of the movies of Phase 4 down to roughly negative $11.5 million. Even if some of my calculations and estimations are a bit off, they won't be off by that much. Disney spent over $2.3 billion on these films and walked away having lost money on their investment. Wokeness is not a solvent business model. This helps to prove that. And when you factor in the production costs of the Disney Plus shows, well, I'm sure the MCU shills would probably like me to shut up by now.
I declare bankruptcy!
What is Phase 5 going to look like moving forward? Well, we're going to keep this part short and simple. According to this article from That Park Place, it seems doubtful Ant-Man will hit that target. It reads, Disney and Marvel Studios finally gets China back, and it didn't matter as Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania is now set to fail at the box office to reach its financial break-even point based on the poor opening weekend and historical performance norms for recent MCU titles. With a very low $225 million three-day global box office opening weekend, it seems very unlikely this film will even manage to reach $600 million by the end of its box office run. This will go down as yet another financial loss for Disney Marvel Studios.
What the hell is that?
With a production budget north of $200 million and a massive advertising campaign that even included a pricey Super Bowl commercial, one would expect that Quantumania needs at least $700 million to reach a break-even point. Is this another Marvel flop and the beginning of the Phase 5 dive?
Yeah, I'd like to solve the puzzle.
All right, go ahead.
Yep.
That's it, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think this whole thing, this Phase 5 nonsense, is going to tank, and I believe Disney knows it. Iger is woke, but even he has to admit the crap they're shoveling isn't selling. And I believe that when push comes to shove, Bob Iger is a practical man. He is only woke because he currently believes it is pragmatic to be woke. But reality is asserting itself. People don't like this shit, and the company may just have to switch directions.
Welcome to Earth.
I have long advocated on this channel for withholding your money from Disney in order to force them to see the light. Once more, I will implore you to persist. Don't go see Ant-Man. I heard it's terrible anyway, but even if it's not, if you want Disney to change, then don't bankroll them. Stand your ground. But what do you think? Will this movie lose money? And will Phase 5 be more of the same like Phase 4? Or will it become profitable? Drop your thoughts in the comment section and we'll chat all about it.
Super. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.